You're listening to the Uncommon Life Podcast. Whether you're a startup or you've been in business for 10 years, this show is for you. Each week, you'll get mentored by business leaders who deliver valuable strategies, tactics, and tips on how you can pursue your passion without compromise. We'll show you how to achieve balance while sticking to your core values so you can have an uncommon life. Now, here's your host, Jimmy Fullerton.
Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Uncommon Life Podcast, coming to you from a mysterious location somewhere in the Chattahoochee Valley in Columbus, Georgia. I'm your host, Jimmy Fullerton, and today I got the pleasure of speaking with Jason McKenzie. Now, Jason truly embodies the word serial entrepreneur. He owns, among many other things, Ride On Bikes, which is not just an ordinary bike shop. It's really a first-class operation staffed with people who are passionate about what they do, and it shows in the way they treat their customers. From the moment you walk through those doors, you know there's something different about that place. Jason also owns Ride On Adventures, which includes a variety of different outdoor adventures. You name it, and they do it. Skiing, biking, boating, skydiving, surfing, mountain biking, cross-country, motorcycle rides, you name it. Just check out their website at rideonadventures.com. Jason also does some public speaking, motivational speaking. He also owns some commercial real estate in downtown Columbus and maybe elsewhere. He's also involved in some other businesses. Now, in part one, Jason shares his story. He's got a very unique background, and he shares some very personal, very dark experiences and how they helped to shape who he is today. We talk about the value of your scars and how you can use your scars to have a positive impact on other people. So it's good stuff. So let's jump right into part one. So I'm talking today with Jason McKenzie. He's a local celebrity in Columbus, Georgia. You are, man. You are.
I wouldn't go that far.
Jason's the owner of Ride On Bikes, Ride On Adventures, public speaker. What else you got going on?
I work with In Color a lot. That's one of my favorite things to do. Work with those guys. They're a video production company that does marketing in town. And
it's one thing I did not know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure enough. Yeah, Jonathan Giles and his team, man, they're absolute magic. So I sell for them and just kind of, get the right people in front of them so they can tell the story they want to tell.
Yeah. So In Color, what else you got going on?
Really and truly, my family owns some restaurants in the uptown area. So I'm always trying to help in any direction I can. I feel like, have some property downtown as well, some tenants. So we're just really got my hands on a little bit of everything, it feels like, as far as business goes. Yeah.
So, yeah, you're definitely a modern day Renaissance man.
I call it serial entrepreneur.
Yeah. When did you first realize you wanted to go in that direction? Instead of taking the traditional route of, regular W-4 employee and,
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. My grandfather on my mother's side, he was military, no education, lied about his age to get into the Army to be able to break away from the sharecropping, and literally stayed in the Fitzgerald, Georgia jail cell one night, the night before he joined the Army. And he was 22 years, ended up working for President Kennedy on his flight staff. Oh. So having that and then he became an entrepreneur after that, had the Ponderosa Motel and the Ponderosa Trailer Park here on Victory Drive. So like the entrepreneur spirit, I feel like started back then, and somebody that was willing to do whatever it took to get there. And, as an entrepreneur, that's what it is. I mean, there's a lot of times where it feels like it's not going to work and you just got to keep driving somehow. So I feel like most of the credit goes there in my grandparents' side of things. And my grandmother was the one that kept the books. Recently, I was able to see their checkbook balance. I mean, it's literally like $8, things like that, and I'm like, man, I have it so good. So I was kind of set up with a really nice foundation of that, work hard. And then my mother had a Victory Pawn Shop on Victory Drive. You can only imagine what that was like back in the late 70s.
Victory Drive used to be the Mecca of Columbus. Man.
That was it.
Was, yeah.
Right next to the tattoo shop where Sailor Bill was and the Hells Angels. The stories are pretty amazing. And then that led into my uncle having the Colony Inn Motel. And my father also had an underground utility business. So I was kind of raised by entrepreneurs. I didn't really know there was another option, to be honest with you. Just what my plan was all from day one.
What was your first entrepreneurial venture that you did?
This is probably not the answer you're looking for, but
I'm not looking for an answer.
Okay, well, my junior year of high school, I changed high schools. There was some politics involved and some baseball, and I got into a fight my sophomore year on the baseball field, and I couldn't play ball anymore, and that was my dream at the time. So my mom put me into a private school, and I went from 600 people in my class to 55 people in my class. I went from locks on my lockers to they don't have lockers. It was like that. It was such a different mentality. Well, my mom, I was buying accessories for my truck. I'm a big car guy, and my mom knows I'm a good kid. I've always had good straight A's and never been in any trouble, but she couldn't figure out where all my money was coming from because I was only making $5 an hour changing oil after school. And she asked me, and I explained to her that I could go to Chick-fil-A in the morning and the kids at school had money and I could double my money on chicken biscuits in the morning. So I think that was probably my first real take at it.
That's when the light came
and I was like, wow. And it wasn't like I wasn't hurting anyone, they were hungry and they didn't have time to get there and they had cash. Yeah. So I think that's probably where it started early on my junior year in high school, realizing that I could double my money.
So after that, at what point did you end up with the idea of ride on bikes? What led to that?
Yeah, so I got a chance to go travel with the Cincinnati Reds when I was 17, 18 years old. I wasn't that good, but I was dating the coach's daughter. So I was really able.
Oh, so you played minor league?
No. So I was playing college ball. I had an opportunity to walk on at Columbus State, and in this particular time, it was a very short period. I was only there. I only did a few practices with him. And Ray Knight, that was his daughter I was dating at the time. And her mother is Nancy Lopez. They were very good to me, and they showed me another side of the celebrity world and things that we dream about as kids, and then you get a chance to go see it. And Ray, he treated me so well, and they allowed me to go out and go experience what it was like to be in the major leagues. I mean, I wasn't actually playing by any means, but I was getting to take batting practice with them, and Ken Griffey Jr. and Adam Dunn and Jason LaRue, all these people that I had really looked up to. It was amazing, man. It really was. And what I learned is that it's not what you think, though. That is a very hard lifestyle. That is a very, very hard job. I know the money's great, and I understand the fame and all that stuff, but it wasn't as glamorous as I thought it was going to be. And I'm very grateful for that experience because that wasn't my dream anymore, I was watching a lot of the heartaches they were having because they're, literally, man, women were just thrown at them. It was unreal, like what was going on a regular basis. And, I want to believe that I'm strong enough in my faith and all those things that would never affect me. But there is a point where I don't know. I haven't been in that situation. I'm not one to judge somebody in that place. So I think putting yourself in temptation like that constantly is maybe an issue. And realizing they're on a bus or an airplane and eating Star Chili at 2:00 in the morning, and just the grind was so hard, and I wasn't that talented in the first place. I was just very, very driven. So now I feel like a lot of people always think, man, if I wouldn't have got hurt, or if I would have, if I could have just played that one game, I would have been a pro. And if you make it to that level, which is very, very unlikely, let's be honest.
Small percentage.
And then it's not what you think it is. I got to see it firsthand. So I will always be in debt to Ray and Nancy for showing me that. And, there's no negative about that. And they were just very good to me and showed me what the real life was like that they chose to live,
So that kind of helped you define what you didn't want to do. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Which I think it's almost more important than what you do want to do.
Yeah, and you never know until you try stuff.
Yeah, so I have a list of those things, But when, baseball was over for me, shortly after, me and Ashley had split up. And I kind of, at 19, when you lose your first love, that kind of thing, it's like...
oh, I hear you, man. You think the world's coming to an end.
Jamie, I'll tell you, man, I lost weight. I started doing bad in school, and I ended up getting a speeding ticket. My first speeding ticket, it was right there in Phoenix City by Lakewood Baptist Church. Y'all know the downhill. I got me at 16 and 35. I lost my license for 6 months.
So your whole world was...
Oh, man, it was just falling apart. Yeah, and looking back at it now, it's kind of humorous because I'm like, it really was... Things weren't that bad, now because I've been through so much now. But at that time,
perspective.
Exactly. I pulled out of school. I went to work for my dad doing underground utility work. We were burying fiber optic cable, and that's another perspective. And I was in a ditch, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and for the first time, realized what my dad had done to provide for me. all those years, and first time realized why he wasn't at the baseball games and why I was able to have a dirt bike and able to go to private school my last 2 years, because my dad had been in a ditch and he had worked his tail off.
Learned to appreciate the sacrifices they've made.
Yeah. Thank goodness for that, because you don't know as a kid, you don't understand why somebody might not be there at the time. So when that led into, I ended up working for my dad for 2.5 years, made a whole lot of money. You don't have the opportunity to have a dog or a relationship or anything, you're staying in a Motel 8 and it is what it is.
But if you look at it, I guess like a short term, I'm doing this for just a short time, and then, I'll use this to maybe as a platform for something else later.
That's exactly right. I think that for me, that was another one of those things I learned I didn't want to do. And again, no disrespect to my father. I mean, I'm so grateful for what he did for us and our family, but it wasn't a lifestyle I wanted to live the rest of my life. And so I saved my money, and my mom's dad had left me some money in the stock market to pay for my college. But the deal was, if I had a scholarship, that I could have the money when I graduated to help start my own business. So I came back in 2007 and finished my degree, and started working at Ride On Bikes during that time as well, just a $7 an hour. Let me back up just a little bit. So in 2003, I was in Columbus. This is right before I got my speeding ticket. This is right during that time. And my uncle, Buddy Nelms, he had bought the building that Ride On Bikes is in now.
Right.
Goodwill was in it at the time, and they had moved. And we had the idea of doing a shoe store where the juice bar is now, and a bike shop where the bike shop is.
Yeah.
And it was going to be funky bikes and ugly shoes. That was our big plan. And our goal was to rent bikes for $10 a day. And at that time period, I felt like if I could rent 30 bikes a day at $10 a day, like $300 a day is a lot of money,
Was this your business, or were you just working at the business?
I was just working for Buddy.
Okay, you're working for Buddy.
Yeah,
right.
We helped start it. I mean, I built the first bikes that walked in the door and learned a lot,
How old were you at this time?
I was 19.
19?
Yeah. But then I lost my license and all those things happened, and then I ended up leaving. Buddy had, this is an interesting part of the story, Buddy had hired Byron, who was my business partner the last 11 years. Anybody that knows Ride On Bikes knows Byron. He's the typical grumpy mechanic in the back that is, rides 10,000 miles a year, literally, like I'm not exaggerating, and can fix anything, but grumpy. And, I was 19. I knew everything, that kid. And Byron was going through some hard times at the time as well, and we couldn't get along. And I told my uncle he had to make a decision between me or Byron. And anyway, so I took a job down in Jacksonville with my dad. That's the really how I did it.
That bluff didn't work, huh?
Yeah, and I'm very grateful for that. I mean, looking back, where I understand why the decision was made, and it was the best thing he could have done for me and the business. But when I came back, we'll fast forward. When I came back in 2007, Byron was the owner. Him and Buddy were owners, and Byron hired me at $7 an hour, which was a little.
So that ultimatum actually worked, but in a long form kind of way.
It did.
So,
yeah, Buddy, he has wisdom. He doesn't ever show it, but you looking back and oh, that's what he was doing. You know what I mean? So
the conversations I've had with Buddy, and for those people that don't know, Buddy he's a part owner of Mabella's, Salt Cellar, the Loft. What else? Several buildings in Uptown, so he has a lot of tenants that work with him, and he never stops. I mean, he's always got something else going, from he's pretty much focused in Uptown at this point because he sold the Colony Inn and a few things that he had going. But just a guy for me to really look up to, a really great mentor to have. So here you are now at Ride On Bikes, working for Buddy and Byron. So at that point, are you like their partners or? No, I'm a $7 an hour sales guy at this point. Right. And I started going back to school because I had some college time in between. And, I think a lot of people go through this, but when I was in school, I was like, God, I got to make some money. What am I doing? Then after that semester, I'd go to work. And then you're working and you're like, I don't want to do this. I need my degree. And then you go back to school. I did that for a little while back and forth. But for the sake of time, it's hard. People, I don't understand people that just have it all. They know exactly what they want to do. Yeah. From the time they're 15, 16 years old, and they just go right after it. I admire those people. Yeah. I wasn't one of those either. It's hard. It's really hard to learn yourself and know really what drives you. I think what the people that actually take action and do stuff, it helps eliminate a lot of those question marks. Right. About, what do I like, what don't I like? If you never do anything, you're never going to know. And the worst thing you can do is get locked up into a career that you don't really like, but you never tried anything else. So you just stick with it and you're miserable.
Yeah.
That's happened to a lot of people. So
It really has, and, like my girlfriend, Jordan, she knew she wanted to be a nurse at 8 years old. And I got to tell you, man, I've never seen anyone that is so serious about their job and so in love with their job. I mean, she comes home from work now and she'll pull out the textbooks and study something to make sure she made the right decision throughout the day. She's just in love with her job.
Very conscientious, yeah.
Yeah, and I envy her for that. I mean, I love it. I love that she's that way. I'm still not that way. I mean, I'm 35 and I'm still trying to figure out what my next move is and what I'm going to do,
But you do, so what she has that passion for what she does. Now, you also possess that same trait about whatever it is you're doing, right? Whatever you're plunged into, you're passionate about it, right?
All in, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way to be. That's a
is.
critical trait.
Yeah,
that
for
way you
sure.
can stay energized.
That's right.
So, all right. So, what was, as far as ride on bikes goes, how did your progress? Tell me about how that happened.
All right. So I, again, try to, for the sake of time, kind of get the gist of it. In 2007, it was August 2007 when Buddy and Byron hired me. I'm going to school, so I'm only part-time salesperson. The manager quit 2 months after I started. She just didn't come back to work. It just didn't ever show back up. And so I filled in some duties at the time. Like, hey, I'll just help out till you find someone, was basically a part of it. And Buddy pulled a brain ninja move. He, and Byron, they both took me to Las Vegas to Interbike, which is no longer a thing as of last year, but it was the nation's largest bike show. Jimmy, you can't see all of it. I mean, it's 5 days and you cannot see everything that's there. It's unreal.
So that's how they hooked you.
They got me.
Yeah.
I didn't know the industry was like that. I had no idea. I liked to race BMX growing up, and I loved my road bike and my mountain bike, but it wasn't like that. And I was mind blown. And they came back, and I asked they want to know what it would take for me to manage the store. Now, keep in mind, I'm still in school, so I'm not going to be there all day, every day. But I asked for $300 a week and a bicycle. There was a $2,200 bicycle I really, really wanted in the shop. And that year, 2007, the shop did $470,000. It was their biggest year. It was doing really well.
What do you attribute that to?
That was just because it was a need in the community. The Riverwalk was there. At that time, there wasn't a sign on the building. It was just, there was a need. And you had Byron, who was a rock star that could fix anything. Mm-hmm. And in this community, it was the first time that people had taken the service part of cycling seriously.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you wouldn't get a phone call back. Buddy's from the motel business, which is taking care of people, you know what I mean, and serving people. And when he brought that concept into the bike shop business, people had not seen that in Columbus yet. So I think that's why it was doing so well at the time. But I had told them for $300 a week in that bicycle that I could get the sales up to $600,000 in 2008. And they kind of laughed at me, but they needed the help. And it wasn't that much money for them, so they made it work. It was a lot at the time. But so anyway, in 2008, we did $740,000. There wasn't a sign on the building. There wasn't a Facebook page. There wasn't a website, nothing. That was all the thing. I was getting my marketing degree at Columbus State, so I was learning all these things. We weren't really studying social media yet at that time, but the rest of it we were.
Hey guys and gals, my apologies for interrupting, but I have something I want to share with you. If you want to recession-proof your life and be able to thrive financially in any environment, then I have something for you. It's a blueprint I use for business and life. It's a combination of what I've learned from my mentors and through my own blood, sweat, and tears over the course of 20 years. It contains 5 key principles that will transform and elevate your life and business if you apply them consistently. Believe me, if I had this blueprint 20 years ago, I could have saved myself a lot of time and money, but I'm sharing it with you now for free when you go to www.uncommonlifepodcast.com. You can get yours for free today. Yeah, when did social media, that kind of got in full throttle, like around 2000 and...
I think 9 and 10 is really when it started picking up.
I think that's when I got on Facebook. That's when I got my first Facebook invite. So basically, you're studying marketing at CSU, and you're running at this point. You're running Ride on Bikes.
That's correct, yeah.
All right, so what were some of the biggest challenges you were facing at that time while you were doing those two things, which is a lot on your plate?
That was a lot going on. It was just, I really got to tell you, man, I was obsessed with it. I loved it. I would sleep in the office. If you wanted to, at that time, if you wanted to go on a date with me, it was Friday night at the bike shop. You'd help me do inventory, and I would order in like a Grey Goose and tonic and a Papa John's pizza. That was my Friday night routine. and we would label product. I mean, it was everything to me. It wasn't a grind as I know grinds now, because I didn't know any better. I was so excited, man. And it lasted for years. Like, that excitement of just, I cannot wait. And I had goals I was trying to hit, you know, and in the end of 2008, we did $740,000. And I was cocky at that point. I was like, hey man, I'll tell you what, if you give me $500 a week, a Subaru Outback, which is what I wanted, and a $6,500 bicycle, I'll do $1 million next year. And they laughed at me. They said, man, there's no way in hell you're going to over double our numbers in 2 years. And it wasn't just me. I was just the one driving the ship. Obviously, I had an awesome team all around me, you know. But they said, we're going to do it because you kind of already deserved it from dollar wise, you know. So they got me that stuff, man. And on December 18th of 2009, I graduated from Columbus State University that day. I walked with my degree, and we hit $1 million.
Wow.
And that night at my graduation party at the Loft, Buddy and Byron, with me having had zero thoughts that this was going to happen, they pulled me up on the stage and they offered me a third of the business. So that's how I became owner of Ride on Bikes, was by just staying there all the time, acting like I was the owner anyway, you know?
Yeah. And so you've been the owner of Ride on Bikes since
2009, December of 2009. Yeah.
Okay.
The part owner, yeah.
And I have to say, it's a first class operation. The people y'all have working there, they're really good at what they do. They really make sure you get the right bike, it's the right fit. I mean, they're awesome at what they do. Now, who does the hiring and who selects and hires the people y'all have working for you?
That's
you do
me.
that?
I do 100% of the hiring and firing. I tried to hand that off at one time, and then I just saw the direction of my business going an area I didn't want to go, you know. One of the biggest challenges in the bicycle industry, in my opinion, is that elitist mentality. You know, a lot of people are intimidated to walk into bike shops because and there's nothing wrong with the guys that shave their legs, and, you know, it's all about how fast they can go. And I mean, I love that customer too. They're my friends, you know.
Right.
But I feel like that is such a small percentage of the people. That person's going to find the right bike shop. But the non-cyclist is who is super important to get them in the door, because you can change their life. I mean, I have a customer right now, man. She's 5'1" and has lost over 100 pounds. You know, like,
yeah,
that she needed to find us. And if we'd have been too intimidating for her to walk in the door, I mean, her conversation is if I'm not going to tell you how much money she spent, because I know this is probably going to be outward, but the amount of money she spent, I was like, hey, you don't need to spend that much money, and for what you need on your bike. And she said, Jason, it's cheaper than my medical bills would have been if I wouldn't have met you. It was a very big reality for me. And I got a lot of those stories, man, that people walked in, they weren't intimidating by our store. I'm not a skinny guy in the first place. I'm not some hotshot cyclist. You know, I just love cycling and I love to help people. And I feel like that is very obvious when you walk in the door. I hope it is, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, it sounds like after that conversation, you realized after talking to her that what you're doing has some serious value to people.
It really does, man. You know, I don't know I always question myself, if my uncle would have been in the shoe business, would I be in shoes right now? I don't really know that answer, because I didn't have a passion for being in the bicycle business. But my passion is helping people. Yeah. Period. You know, and whatever that happens, and the bicycle business happens to be the vehicle that I've been presented and the opportunity that was given to me. And I'm taking full advantage of it, you know, every direction I can. And man, the relationships, it's interesting, man. The bike business, the margins are small. There's not a lot of profit. My team works there because they love bikes and they love helping people. That's the reason. Nobody's out here stacking up cash.
So you look for passion, basically somebody that really loves it, because you can't fake it.
Can't fake it.
I think you could probably, by this point, spot it pretty quick if somebody's faking it.
I'm getting
right?
a lot better.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot better. You know, I'm very grateful for, you know, like Ross Cathy with Chick-fil-A. You know, he's Truett's grandson, and he's become a friend of mine. And I talk to him because they do such a good job hiring, and he's helped me so much in my hiring processes of the questions I ask and how to get the authentic people that I need, you know, standing at my front door.
People, yeah. Hiring and interviewing people is really, it's an art. I mean, learning how to dig stuff out of people is not easy to do.
Man, some of the answers I've had, I mean, it is ridiculous.
Yeah, and asking people the same question several different ways to get at what the real truth is.
That's right.
So, but yeah, the passion thing is really important, because that's when I was hiring the GM, looking for GMs for launch. That's one thing about Jonathan that set him apart to me, was I could tell he was hungry. There were other people that I interviewed that had more experience, probably more qualifications, but this dude, I knew he was smart, but I could tell he was also really, really hungry. And so that was a big deal for me because that hunger will sustain you through the ups and downs and the bad times. So
very similar. I can teach bicycles. I can't teach that drive. I can't teach compassion. I can't teach people to care. I can teach you bicycles. I mean, that's just, it changes so fast. If you're not constantly studying, you get behind on the times in the first place.
That's what they say, to hire for the values and train for the skills.
Sure.
Unless it's some specific thing like, you're a doctor, obviously.
Right, yeah.
But so let's pivot for a second. You had some life-altering experiences that changed you. Can you talk a second about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that life, we all have major things in our life that happens, and I think it's important to tell those stories. So I want to talk about. I haven't talked a lot about it in public, in general, but and so I got married to Natalie in September of 2010, and she passed away in March of 2011. And, when I do a lot of public speaking, I kind of just leave it at that. But I think today might be an opportunity to actually talk about a little more of the details of what actually happened. I don't want to go too far into it and get too dark, but, she actually committed suicide. And, I've battled with that a lot, to how to talk about it. And because it's such a scary subject, especially now. I mean, we're seeing more and more of it, the more with the soldiers and things.
Yeah.
And I feel like, man, at first, I have so many people say, man, like, how selfish that must be and that kind of thing. But it's not, man. This is the least selfish person I ever met in my entire life, that did this. So kind of digging into what actually happened. And I feel like I understand it more now the older I get. It's been 9 years. This month was 9 years that it happened. And, it rocked my world, man. The first thing when I found out, I wasn't home. When I came home, I was accused and had to be taken downtown for questioning. And it was very
traumatizing, I bet.
Man, it's unreal because you're already trying to process that you just lost your wife. And, the truth is that, man, I did feel responsible. I felt like I didn't, I would have handled things differently if I would have known the mental state that she was in. I think I did feel like it was my fault. And then, but you can't say that because you're actually being accused of murder at this point, And so, like, making sure that I said the right things. And, it wasn't just a one time. I was questioned. They told me they knew that I did it and things like that. Like it was over. And I know that's just their job. They were just trying to prove my innocence, I guess, more than anything. But it was just it was an absolute nightmare, man. You see this stuff on TV, you see this stuff on movies, but when it's happening to you and your house is the one with caution tape around it, and your house is, it's your wife that did that. It was pretty
like
surreal.
A nightmare that you just couldn't wake up from.
Yeah, still, like. Man, 9 years later, you look back at it, you're like, man, I still can't believe that actually happened.
So how did that change you?
If we kind of, again, fast forward to where I'm at now, my understanding of people is understanding that I don't know anything first, is a big deal for me. Understanding, more compassionate. For example, I'll give you an example. I've never been a guy to like bully or make fun of. I always kind of accepted everyone. It's always been my thing my entire life. But when I would see someone like cut on themselves, for example, I just couldn't understand it. It felt stupid.
Cut on themselves?
Yeah, see like people like cut them. You see people like cut their arms and stuff like.
Oh, yeah.
Mentally off.
Yeah.
I didn't ever understand it.
What's that called? Like there's a term for it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I couldn't figure it out. And then one day I was at a CrossFit Inception. I was working out. And the coach at the time, Chris, he always pushed me very hard. And one day, man, I was doing deadlifts, and he put his hand on my back. He said, "Hey, man, you need to stop." And I was like, "Dude, I got 2 more sets." I kept going. He's like, "Jason, stop." And I kept pushing, and then he grabbed me and got angry. He said, "Stop right now. Put the bar down." He said, "You're bleeding all over my floor." And man, this was, 2 months after I lost Natalie. And I realized for the first time that the physical pain felt better than the emotional pain. And all those people I had seen throughout my life that were dealing with, that's what they were doing, man. They were trying to cover up the mental pain they were going through.
What caused you to bleed, though?
It was just my calluses being ripped off my hands.
Oh. Okay.
I was just pushing so hard. And I'm not that guy, man. I'm usually that guy like, I think I'm done now, I don't have to finish the set. But I had gotten so engrossed in like trying to deal with all the things I was processing.
Physical, it was like a distraction. That's what basically, it was. Yeah. It absorbed your concentration.
Man, the weird thing that happened, Jimmy, is like I lost my fear of dying. I didn't want to die. It wasn't that. I just lost a lot of my fears. I got rewired a little bit. I started winning the motorcycle races that I was in. I lost 44 pounds in that 6 months by exercising and diet. It wasn't like I just wasn't eating. And
intentionally lost weight.
Right. I started skydiving.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like this thing changed. I was a guy that didn't want to get on a roller coaster before then. And I just changed.
Was it like one of those things where you feel like you just want to get the most out of life? Like life is precious and short.
You don't know how long you got.
You might as well make the most of it while you're here.
And the decision that she had made, it wasn't. I don't feel like it was her that made the decision. So understanding that too is like it was. I was like she was killed. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't her. So understanding that things can go really, really wrong. You know, in the middle of this, man, it was August of 2011. I broke my left arm really bad. Wasn't even racing. I was doing a wheelie across the airfield like an idiot and broke my left arm. And it was a bad break. I couldn't ride my bicycle or my motorcycle for 14 months. I had multiple surgeries. And that was the darkest time of my life then. It was several months after it happened. It was 5 months after everything had happened, but it was because I was processing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And I was having to deal with it. I couldn't just go get on my motorcycle. I couldn't go jump out of an airplane at the time. I couldn't go work out.
You had to deal with that grief, which you did not deal with when you had the chance. So
that was the time I got, before I get too far from this, I got to tell you at that time, man, my friends and family that came to support me, I'm in debt to forever, Ryan Edwards, man, he was there the night it happened, and he showed up at the house and he took care of me. He let me live in his home because I didn't have anywhere to go at the time. And Garrett Lawrence, I don't know if you know him. He owns Nonic and Jarfly and Multitude. He's one of the owners.
I want to talk to them, though, at some point. But
yeah, they're great guys, man. And Garrett, he was my manager at the time. And, dude, he stepped up and he ran my business where I disappeared. And even when I showed up, I wasn't mentally there. And I will never forget what he did for me during that time. And the list goes on, man. I mean, people they cook for me. They try to cheer me up. They brought me things to, I don't know, man. It goes on and on, how good people were to me at that time.
Yeah. So there was some good that came out of it. There's usually always something good that comes out of a bad situation.
There is.
You see who your true friends are, and it can bring out the best in people too.
Well, and it was a weird time, man. I remember the first time I decided to go out to eat away from the house and go put myself in the public. It was a few weeks after all this happened. And my mom, we went to Denny's because I knew I wouldn't know anybody at Denny's. I never go to Denny's.
Love Denny's.
Look at that Grand Slam, boy, we got to get it. And we overheard a couple talking about me. You could hear them whispering. See,
I told you were a celebrity even back then.
Yeah, but it was about what had happened.
Yeah.
And my mom went over there. My mom is a fighter, man. If there's anybody, my mom has been unreal, somebody to follow in her footsteps. But she went over there. She's like, he can hear you, right? And they were embarrassed. But it was like this constantly whispering when I'd walk into somewhere, because I am in retail. I do know a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so did Natalie. She worked at Sonova. She'd been there 14 years and she was very well known in the community as well. And it was just a constant, man. You knew everybody was talking about it and they weren't talking to your face. It was a very uneasy time.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, one of the good things that came out of this is I was sitting at a red light the day after the funeral, and I was kind of zoned out. I was the first one at the light, and the light had turned green, and I didn't go. And the guy behind me lost his mind, man, honking the horn. And there was a realization for me. I was like, man, if he had any idea what I was dealing with this week, he would not be upset. And now it makes me think of that, even now that I'm 9 years away from it. When I see somebody do something stupid or I'm frustrated about how they're acting, that goes back in my mind. I don't know what they're dealing with today.
Yep, that's what I've been through the same thing where there's something, especially about traffic, that can infuriate you. But now what I try to do, sometimes unsuccessfully, but I try to put my shit, you never know what somebody's dealing with. They could be, I was at the grocery store one day and there was this older guy, probably in his 80s, in front of me. And it was taking a long time. He was counting all this money, but he was dressed in this little suit and he had this nice gold watch on, but he looked like he was sad. And I was thinking, man, at first I got upset, but then I was like, you never know. This guy could be going through cancer. His wife could have died. There's no telling. He looked really sad. I remember I told him, I made a comment about how nice his watch was and smiled at him. And he just kind of lit up that I actually noticed him and was nice to him. And it made me feel good, because you never know what somebody's dealing with.
it's so important to get a smile at that time, and man, when you're in that dark place, and everyone goes through that. There's not an exception. Life is hard. If you haven't happened to you yet, I'm sorry to tell you that something's bad going to happen. It's just the way it is. And once you understand that, I feel like it's a lot easier.
Okay, so that is the end of part 1 of my interview with Jason McKenzie. Now, you're not going to want to miss part 2. On part 2, we talk. This is the first podcast I've done since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic that has swept across the land. So we do talk about that and how it's impacted us and some things that we've done to try and stay positive in a time when it just seems like there's so much darkness and negativity and uncertainty and people are panicking and hoarding. And we're trying to talk about giving and trying to stay positive and some things we're doing there. We also talk about morning rituals, the importance of those to get your mindset right. We go into some different off some bunny trails here, but we talk about the cold plunge, what that's about, some books that have impacted us. So anyway, it's good stuff. It's a lot of fun. I think you will get a lot out of it. So everybody out there, y'all have a good day.
This is the podcastfactory.com.